Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. Today we have another in our series about harm reduction. More specifically, I would like to talk today about harm reduction when it comes to eating disorders, specifically bulimia and oral piercings and things like that. Now, before we get started, you may be thinking, harm reduction for eating disorders, is that really a thing? And the answer is yes. Harm reduction can be incredibly beneficial with eating disorders in the same way that it is with substance use disorders. In fact, these two see a lot of overlap in how they're treated and handled, with this linear path to recovery being viewed as the only acceptable form of treatment or dealing with these problems, even as we know harm reduction can really help save lives and really help people along the process. Now, in a lot of ways, you can't compare eating disorders and substance use disorders because only one of them is criminalized. People with eating disorders don't have to worry about increased risks of bloodborne pathogens, contaminated supplies, or incarceration. But they also don't have access to harm reduction. As someone with an eating disorder and who's gone through eating disorder treatment, I can say with confidence that many doctors and medical professionals view eating disorder recovery as this linear path from having the disorder to needing to be recovered or healed and in remission. There is no space that is made for harm reduction or for people who need assistance with where they're at in the disorder before they can move on to a full recovery. Many clinicians look at people who aren't ready to completely change these behaviors or completely give up these behaviors as people who just haven't been worked with or gotten to the right place to get there yet. But I don't think that people necessarily want to be pushed down a pipeline of just recovery. I think people want an option of choice. And just like when it comes to substance use disorder, eating disorders can definitely benefit from harm reduction. I would rather see someone figure out ways to be a little bit safer and to still stay with us with what they're doing as they progress down the road to recovery than be told that their only opportunity is to recover completely or don't bother. I don't think we should allow people who struggle with eating disorders to spend decades in an unsuccessful cycle of abstinence and recovery and then going right back to where they were and back and forth when there are options that we could provide people to allow for a safer experience. Harm reduction deserves to be provided to all. In that effort, and inspired by the work of Castillo Medrano and the comments that I have gotten from folks in similar situations, I would like to address some harm reduction when it comes specifically to bulimia and purging and oral piercings. For those not familiar, bulimia is an eating disorder characterized by periods of binging and purging, and that purging can often include vomiting or regurgitating up your food. And this act can be very harmful to our mouth, our teeth, and yes, our oral piercings. So what are some ways that we can try and minimize that harm if that's a behavior that we are engaging in? The biggest step is actually going to be to wear high quality implant grade titanium jewelry. A lot of folks are under the misinterpretation that plastic jewelry is safer for oral piercings, and it's not. I have a whole blog post that gets into why plastic is not actually as safe as we think it is. But the biggest element in it is that plastic breaks down over time, especially in the mouth. And especially if you are practicing behaviors like purging, the enzymes and the acids that are happening during that process will break down plastic jewelry very quickly. This can allow it to trap bacteria and debris, and also the surface to become pitted and rough, which can damage your teeth and gums. So metal jewelry is actually going to be much safer for you. Now, that being said, metal jewelry can still be damaged by these things as well, and a really great way to monitor that jewelry is actually to wear anodized body jewelry. Anodization is a process by which we use electricity to create an oxide layer on titanium body jewelry. That oxide layer refracts light differently and allows us to see it as different colors. However, because of the way this reaction happens, hydrogen and certain acids and peroxides can remove or damage the anodizing layer. And yes, throwing up can definitely be one of those things. If you opt to wear anodized jewelry in your oral piercings, even if it's not anodized on the front, you can keep the visible part the silver color or whatever color you like. But if you have the posts or the pieces that you wear inside your mouth anodized to something like a pale blue or a golden, you'll start to see that anodizing discolor as the jewelry is becoming damaged from these practices. You'll see the anodizing start to fade into like a weird kind of like muddy grayish color. When that happens, that's a sign that it's time to see your piercer and either have your piece polished and re-anodized or consider investing in a new piece. But if you continue wearing a piece that's damaged from practices like this, it can be a sneaky place for bacteria and debris to collect, and this can cause further oral health issues down the line, including damage to your teeth and gums. So honestly, like legitimately my biggest tip is to wear anodized body jewelry and check your anodization. And when you start to see that anodizing getting a little funky, go back to your piercer and see if they're able to polish and re-anodize the piece for you, or get a new piece that's safe on the surface finish that doesn't have those imperfections and those damages from the acid. Immediately afterwards, mixing a little baking soda with water and using that to rinse and spit is very helpful for cleaning out your mouth and also cleaning out your piercings, and I would strongly suggest doing so. I would then suggest waiting about an hour and then brushing your teeth, or waiting an hour before consuming any acidic or sugary foods. When we are doing behaviors like this, we are damaging the enamel of our teeth, we're damaging our gums and our soft palate, so we want to make sure we take care to try and minimize that damage as much as possible. Rinsing with a baking soda mixture directly afterwards can help neutralize what's in our mouth, and then in about an hour, brushing and caring for our teeth and gums, and also limiting our consumption of acidic or super sweet foods can help minimize the damage to our mouth in general, but also to our piercings and our jewelry. And whenever you're brushing, make sure you're brushing the inside of your piercings and your jewelry as well, as that can really help. Now, a lot of folks wonder if the right move is to leave jewelry in or take jewelry out. I honestly personally suggest leaving jewelry in. A, constant insertion and removal of jewelry can cause its own level of irritation, but B, if you leave jewelry out, sometimes the liquid that ends up in our mouth, sometimes debris, sometimes acids can get into the piercing channel and cause irritation. So the jewelry being present there can help prevent that from happening. And you can monitor any damage or issues by watching anodization on the jewelry. Now, that being said, you can still end up with these things getting trapped around the jewelry. So that's why rinsing afterwards with that baking soda solution, or just clean water if you have access to it, is very important. And make sure you're cleaning your piercings down thoroughly afterwards. About an hour after doing things, doing a really good brush and really making sure to go over and take care of your piercings will really help with that. I would also ensure that you're cleaning your piercings well on the outside if we're talking about lip piercings, making sure that there's no debris or anything like that that's getting built up or any irritation. If you notice your piercings are getting irritated, obviously try and give them a break. And I know that it can be hard, but sometimes that can be a good motivator for folks. We don't necessarily always want to take care of our bodies or ourselves, but sometimes we can be motivated to take care of your piercings. So if you notice your piercing is getting a big irritation bump or having problems from these behaviors, I would strongly suggest using that as motivation to take at least a couple of days, if not a couple of weeks, away from this behavior to try and allow your piercing to recover. Sometimes it can very much help to think of our piercing as a separate extension of ourselves, because in times when we aren't able to be kind to ourselves, we can be kind to our piercings because we're motivated or passionate to keep them. Because of the harm and damage that this process can cause to our teeth and gums, that makes it extra important for you not to play with your oral piercings. That means not chewing on them, not running them along your teeth, just let them exist and try not to mess with them. Another factor of that is making sure that you have properly fitted jewelry. Jewelry that is too long can get caught and snagged. We can catch it in our teeth and gums more often, and it can end up cumbersome and in the way when these behaviors are occurring. But oftentimes these behaviors can cause some swelling, and jewelry that's too short won't have any room to accommodate for that. So if you notice that your piercings are getting over swollen and agitated after these behaviors, consider going just a half size or one size up for your default wearable. That way you have a little bit of extra room for the swelling that does often come alongside these behaviors. Now, for just some good harm reduction about this behavior in general, because I don't think there is harm reduction about this that is widespread often enough, make sure you're drinking things like Gatorade, electrolytes, Pedialyte. Those are all great on days when you do end up purging, and they help your body replenish important nutrients that it needs. Make sure you sip slowly. Don't pressure yourself to drink a whole large container. Just some will help your body get back what it's missing. Likewise, make sure you're drinking fluids during the day. Water is obviously best. It doesn't have to be water. It can just be any non-alcoholic beverage, but something to get your fluid content back up. Make sure you're using an enamel-building toothpaste that's going to help repair the harm that's caused to your teeth, and most medical professionals suggest using a soft toothbrush that's more gentle on your teeth and gums. And try and take any medications or supplements at the time of day that's furthest from the time when you would normally purge. That way your body has time to actually absorb and take your medication or your supplements or vitamins. This is not an extensive nor exhaustive list of harm reduction. I am going to post up a really great graphic about harm reduction for eating disorders. I'm also going to link this graphic and some resources in the comments down below. Harm reduction for eating disorders is not widely spoken about and not widely offered, which I think unfortunately leads to a lot of folks stuck in that repeating cycle of thinking their only options are full recovery or full eating disorder, and there's nothing in between. But I really believe that with harm reduction, we can help people take baby steps down the road of recovery and get someone to a place that maybe doesn't look like full recovery, but does look like a safer, healthier existence where they may then be able to access more tools and more resources to allow for a full recovery. My page has always been and will always be a safe space, so if there are other harm reduction topics that relate to body piercings that you would like to see me talk about, please feel free to leave them in the comments down below, or if they are more private, you can email or DM me anonymously with your suggestions. To all those of you who reached out and asked me to cover this topic and were willing to be vulnerable with questions about how things like bulimia and purging behaviors can affect your piercings, I want you to know that I'm incredibly proud of you for reaching out to me with this, that I will always be a safe space and I will always be here to offer advice without judgment, and I wish you the best, whatever that looks like for you. Know that regardless of where your status is in recovery or working with your disorder, you are valid, you are loved, and you are worthy of support at whatever point in your disorder you are at. I adore each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart, and as per usual, if you like the content that I put out and you'd like to see me do harm reduction videos, please hit like and subscribe, and hopefully we are sitting down and chatting again soon with some more good, accessible education and knowledge to keep ourselves safe. Have a great rest of your day.